Hello, everyone, and welcome to Nella-Joi Nation with your host, Norma Stanley, the #1 radio show about disability community news and advocacy. Here's your host, Norma Stanley.
Good day, everyone. This is Norma Stanley, also known as Nella-Joi, and you're listening to Nella-Joi Nation, the nation's #1 radio show sharing disability community news and advocacy, where we discuss issues of importance and interest for and about the disability community, the nation's largest minority population. Today, we will be speaking with Miss Myrna Clayton, an international jazz singer and a cultural ambassador for the U.S. State Department. She's also a disability community advocate and an executive director and founder of the nonprofit called Able To. Hi, Myrna, and thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you, Norma. I appreciate your invitation. This is awesome.
Well, you know, we've known each other a few years, but I want you to share, first of all, about your music, because you've been an international jazz singer for a while. You just came back from, was it Guatemala? Tell us about your work as an international jazz singer and how you became a cultural ambassador for the U.S. State Department.
Thank you. Everybody has their calling, I believe, and everybody has a path. And my interest in performing internationally has been for a while. Actually, God placed in my spirit a worldwide ministry in music. And so with that, back in the early 2000s, I was on a quest to just kind of see what that meant and what that looked like, especially being a jazz singer. And from that path, I ultimately applied for an opportunity with the State Department to represent American music abroad. And in so doing, filled out the application, and we had to audition. And out of 400 bands, we were invited, because everybody's not invited, we were invited to audition live. And so out of 400 bands, they selected 40 to audition live, and they flew us to New York to audition. And literally, we flew in, auditioned for 20 minutes, and flew back out. And we found out later that we were selected one of 10. And so out of 400 bands, we were selected as 10 bands to represent American music abroad. And then from that, the U.S. State Department invited us to perform at U.S. embassies around the world. And so our very first tour was in 2018, where we performed in the Baltic region, in Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia, Belarus, and Moldova, right in Eastern Europe. Yes. And then the next year we were invited to Namibia to perform at the U.S. Embassy there. And then just right before all this craziness happened, we were invited to perform in Guatemala. And for Women's History Month, last year we were in Namibia for International Jazz Month. And the Baltic region was really celebrating the 100th anniversary of the Baltic region's independence. And so it's for whatever reason that particular culture wants to invite and have jazz music exposed. And each time, so in being selected as a part of the U.S. State Department, we are then deemed cultural ambassadors because we represent American music, American culture in those countries. I don't speak a foreign language, and so it's wonderful to have interpreters there who help us connect with the citizenry, because we're not politicians. We're not going over doing political stuff. We're going on and connecting with the people and musically. But of course, when you connect with people musically, as you well know, the connection is much more intimate, and you're able to connect and enjoy each other's company and enjoy what's most alike about us, as opposed to the differences. We see where we're similar as opposed to where we're different. And so it's a very wonderful thing. And in that, as it relates to the disability community, I'm giving a lot of information in that.
I asked you about one of the things that you try to do. You go is try to connect the disability. Have you been able to do that with your travel to these various countries?
The State Department asked specifically, did we have any special interests? And I, of course, said people with disability is my special interest. And so whenever possible, I want to do something that includes them in the audience, or we have an opportunity to go where they are welcome and available to have a show, have a performance for them. And so each time, whenever possible, they've tried to facilitate that. And it's also allowed me to be able to see what countries are accessible and which ones are not, and which countries have accessible theaters and which ones don't. It was interesting where in Namibia they actually invited us to have a concert at a school for special needs students. And that was phenomenal. It was because we performed, of course, for students there, and then in addition to that, we invited them that were interested to come and play with us, or if they wanted to just kind of interact. And so it was very. We do that with all students, but it was very special to me in this case. In Guatemala, we actually did. It was crazy in Guatemala. We had 5 master classes, a jam session, and a concert in 72 hours. And so in those master classes, there happened to have been a young boy who has cerebral palsy, and he is a wonderful singer. And so I had the opportunity to invite him to be one of the opening acts for us at our concert. It allows me to give a platform to show the abilities of persons that have a disability. But I see it as a person across the disability spectrum. They're able. It's just different. And so, as a matter of fact, it's funny because when he performed for us at the school, recognizing his challenge, he came up and sat down as he sang. And he pulled a chair up and sat down. Well, I asked him for the concert. I said, "Don't sit down." I said, "I need you standing, because you can, so don't sit down. I need you to learn to perform and own your disability, own your uniqueness, and embrace that, because that defines who you are. It's not a negative. It's a definition of who you are. I can't take off my black skin. Right. So don't you take off that which is unique about you. It embraces and defines how excellent you are." So those. And
how did that come across to the audience?
Oh, they were hugely receptive to him, because, like in most cases, you forget the person. That once you see and once you accept, the next thing is, can you sing?
Right.
Right. And once you hear the person, you get caught into the song. You're not looking at their challenge. You're embracing the song.
Right.
So in that case, they were very receptive to him. Yeah.
Well, as a mother of a child with disabilities, and that's one of my things is, wanting to travel internationally, but not knowing which ones of those countries might be accessible for me to bring my daughter. And so, the fact that you were able to do that, just to kind of get an idea, I'd like to talk to you a little bit more about some of those countries like, Africa and even Guatemala, and what it was like from just your observation of some of what I know in Europe, the streets are cobblestone and they're tiny. Actually, it's the same thing in the Caribbean. So wheelchairs, it's challenging to be able to travel with wheelchairs.
It's also from a density population standpoint, that's a factor too, because,
right.
It may be accessible to people, just maneuvering if you're not used to that. Now, it's different if you're accustomed to it, but if you're not used to that, then the density of the population. So if you go into, say, for instance, downtown Lagos, or Mumbai, places that got a ton of people, then or even heck, New York City, it becomes a challenge because you're not accustomed to maneuvering around lots of people, and the person that that you're at ease, they're uncomfortable.
Exactly. Well, we're going to take a break for a second to pay some bills. We're going to come back and talk with Miss Myrna Clayton, founder of Able To, and learn more about what you've been doing as an international jazz singer and disability advocate. We'll be right back.
Thank you.